Growing up, you shared a bathroom, fought over the remote, sat at the exact same dinner table every single night for years. Then adulthood arrived, the shared house disappeared, and somehow, so did the entire relationship, leaving two people who were once inseparable feeling, at family gatherings, considerably closer to strangers than to siblings. A real research into adult sibling estrangement identifies a genuinely specific reason this exact pattern happens so reliably, and Carl Jung's understanding of the persona offers a precise, useful layer to why childhood closeness so often turns out to have been considerably less genuine than it actually felt at the time. Real psychological research on sibling relationships suggests that much of what registers as closeness during childhood is not, in fact, genuine chosen connection. It is proximity, dressed up convincingly as connection. Children sharing a household are essentially placed into constant contact by circumstance. Parental expectation requires them to get along. Holiday traditions require full participation. Family photographs require everyone smiling together. And none of these actually requires the two children involved to have built any genuine, chosen understanding of who the other person actually is underneath all that forced, constant closeness. Jung's understanding adds a genuinely useful, deeper layer here. He believed that a persona often forms specifically in response to a role a family structure demands: the good sibling, the close pair, the ones who never fight in front of guests, and this persona can become genuinely convincing, even to the two people performing it, without ever actually requiring the real, internal work of genuine understanding underneath it. Two siblings can perform closeness this thoroughly and this consistently that neither one fully realizes until much later that the actual internal relationship underneath the persona was never as developed as its outward performance always suggested. This explains why estrangement so often arrives specifically once the external structures holding the relationship together disappear: the shared household, the parents actively managing the dynamic, the constant, forced proximity requiring daily interaction. Once these considerable external supports are removed, whatever genuine internal connection actually existed underneath the performance becomes visible for the first time, and for many adult siblings, that genuine internal connection turns out to have been considerably thinner than decades of dinner tables and shared bedrooms ever suggested. Here is what makes this understanding genuinely important rather than simply a painful realization. Real research also identifies a specific, related cause worth naming directly: genuine, unspoken childhood tension, favoritism everyone quietly noticed but nobody ever actually addressed, different rules applied to different children, resentments that were never resolved and simply calcified quietly over years of forced, polite proximity. These unaddressed tensions do not simply disappear once the siblings involved become adults. They continue operating, quietly shaping every subsequent interaction, until the removal of external structure finally reveals how much genuine unresolved material had been sitting underneath the profound closeness the entire time. Here is what actually helps in working with this pattern directly if you recognize it in your own adult sibling relationships. It helps to distinguish honestly in your own specific case between genuine chosen connection and simple forced proximity, since this distinction reveals whether adult distance actually reflects a genuine falling out or simply the honest, accurate absence of a real connection that circumstance had always been quietly supplying instead. There is a second thing worth practicing directly. If genuine connection is something you actually want to build now, as an adult with a sibling relationship that turned out to be thinner than it appeared, it helps to actually name the old, unaddressed tension directly, rather than continuing the same, familiar performance that originally concealed it, since real adult connection, unlike childhood proximity, actually requires this kind of honest, deliberate choice in order to genuinely exist. If you recognize this specific pattern of childhood closeness turning into adult estrangement, hear this clearly. This was never evidence that something is uniquely broken about your specific family. According to both real research and Jung's understanding, It very often reflects genuine proximity mistaken for genuine connection, and this deserves honest, patient examination rather than continued confusion about how two people who shared so much space could end up knowing each other so little. Think honestly about your own sibling relationships and consider whether the closeness you actually experienced was genuinely chosen or whether it was simply the natural byproduct of shared space and parental expectation. Right below the single word for the specific unaddressed tension you suspect has been quietly sitting underneath your own family's performed closeness. Naming it honestly and choosing whether to actually address it directly now as an adult is the real and practical way you begin building the genuine connection that circumstance alone was never actually going to provide. There is a final piece worth naming since it offers real practical hope rather than only a difficult diagnosis. Recognizing that childhood closeness was largely proximity does not mean genuine connection is now impossible between adult siblings. It simply means the actual work of building it has to happen deliberately now, through genuine choice rather than forced circumstance, and many adult siblings will honestly name what was actually underneath the old performance to go on to build something real, sometimes for the very first time, precisely because they finally stopped mistaking the old performance for the genuine thing. There is a second piece worth naming honestly. Research on sibling relationships also finds that genuine closeness built through real choice, rather than proximity alone, tends to matter considerably for long-term well-being, and adults who do successfully build this kind of chosen, genuine connection with a sibling report meaningfully better outcomes than those who either maintain the old performance or abandon the relationship entirely. Because siblings who were close as children becoming strangers as adults was never, according to both real research and Carl Jung's understanding, evidence of a uniquely broken family. It was very often genuine proximity mistaken for genuine connection, and understanding this honestly was always more accurate than continuing to wonder how the closeness could have simply disappeared.